more listening, less talking. I feel like this is, especially recently, and I think a lot of white folk have. Oh, where's that? Okay, I just got a notification about our chat. Come on.
Oh.
Okay, so listening is a big one, and I feel like recently one of the good things that happened was that a lot of non-black folk really took the reins and were like, cool, we see it now, like we really get it now. We'll talk and we'll hold it down for you, which was nice. Because I'm tired of being nice to people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like it's impossible to say, like, to succinctly say what it is that will improve race relations. I could just say stop treating us like trash. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah. I think I've got a good idea of what has proven to make positive change in the past, and that is like, firstly, at the beginning we spoke about race being a concept, and this concept was created
on that for sure, so people get that into their heads of why it's there.
Absolutely.
And then from there, that point, then it's a lot easier for them to understand everything else.
Very true. I think, yeah, absolutely. And this was a point that Andy's making in the chat now. He says, I've learned more in the last 3 weeks about how bad the situation is than he has in his entire life. It's not right that it needs to be spoken about by so many more people before we learn the truth. And that's going to be my first point, is that the education, like, the history is so whitewashed. Like, I didn't even know that 2.4 million Indians fought and died in World War II until I started researching about it over the past 3 weeks.
And yet, the very guy that asked them to help hated them.
And it's just...
And killed 13 million, was it? Like, or was complicit in allowed them to die. So
yeah. And yeah, I think that's probably the first one, is to really teach about the Haitian Revolution, teach about these things that happened, like talk about the slave trade more than just, oh, it happened and it was bad, but let's not talk about it. Like really need to understand.
One thing on that for sure that annoys me so much, and British people love to say it proudly, like, we ended the slave trade. No, actually, you didn't end the slave trade. What kind of happened was, people started fighting you. You started losing money. You started losing control. Then your colonies, like your own Brits who were now in certain places, started fighting because they were like, yeah, we're kind of not down with this. Actually, we're not down with you being in control of everything anyway. They started fucking your shit up. And then what happened was, people started coming into power and going, we need to be smart about this. And then eventually they went, okay, we're going to outlaw slavery, like we're saying it's not allowed. But they still tried to continue and still hold on to things in any way they could. So they still had their colonies. They still tried to keep control. And those people in places still tried to keep slaves for as long as they could anyway. And it was like...
Yeah. Well, that's where reparations come from. And that's a concept that again, I've only heard about recently. The idea that people who escaped from concentration camps had to pay back money lost to slave owners, which for Haiti only stopped in 1957, I think it was. They were paying back the loss of, because remember, at this point, those people are cattle. You take that cattle away, you owe people money. So people had to pay back.
France kept fighting them, and they only stopped when they were like, all right, you know what? But you got to pay us. And you know what? I love the Haitians for the fact that they were like, apart from the Guyanese, I think the Guyanese are the most gangster, and the Haitians were the next gangster, because the Haitians, they fought. They were like, no, you know what? We're done with this. And as much as, people, like I spoke about in that video about violence and people saying, oh, non-violence, like the Haitians were like, they were brutal. They were like, if you're not our skin color, or actually no, if you are not either completely or mixed, so mulatto, black and mulatto, okay, if you're anything else, you're not allowed. Apart from the Polish, there was Polish prisoners of war who fought with the Haitians, and they had black status in Haiti.
Wow.
And they fought with them to beat the French. But other than that, if you were white, that was it. You needed to leave the island or they were going to kill you.
Wow.
And people say, like, but violence, violence. At the end of the day, I'm like, nobody's doing that here. Like, people talking about violence here. They're talking about the way we went and, like, defended ourselves against these crazy EDL guys and, like, violence, riots. Like, look, if we did it like the Haitians and, like, a lot of the rebels, like, obviously I'm not, you know, I'm not sitting here in chains, so it's a bit different. But still, like, there's still hardly any violence going on. Like, people, and it's like, well, actually, look back in history and look at what these people were doing and look at how they broke free. Like,
and it's a fair statement as well, because for people to say, oh, you know, we don't like the violence, kind of that statement alone immediately dismisses the entire history of what the empire was built on. It wasn't built on, you know, nice handshakes and stuff. It was built on strapping people to cannons and firing them, and it was built on blood. And this was something that I found very interesting, was that people were like, oh, I can get behind the protest, but I don't like it when people spray paint statues. Why are they doing that?
Yeah, but so many times.
Because what you're doing is, like, peaceful protest, unfortunately, doesn't seem to get very far. It's not until you annoy people and get people talking that change starts to happen.
Yeah. Otherwise, arguably, it's not a protest.
Exactly. You're not supposed to like protests.
If you're walking down the street being like, yeah, we're cool, we're not going to cause any problem. Of course they love you then. But are they going to do anything?
Yeah.
Are they going to actually say we need to? No, they don't care.
Yeah. And a good... Sorry, go on.
Go.
I was just going to say, a good example of that was when the UK government agreed to send fighter planes to bomb the Middle East some more, and 200,000 people marched in London. A lot of friends of mine participated in that protest. They marched peacefully. They had their day. It never got mentioned once on airtime on TV. It never changed anything. There was no legislative change at all. So it was essentially just a nice walk through London.
I don't understand why, like I'm not saying people are stupid, because there's a lot of people who I respect who will advocate for peaceful protest. I also understand that sometimes it's good to call it a peaceful protest to avoid any backlash in case something does happen. But, you know, people say, but it's still disruption. Okay, but we have sports matches, we have festivals, we have pride, we have all these things where roads shut down for the whole day, where you basically cannot get to certain things, you don't go to work, you know. We have holidays where nobody goes to work. Why is walking through the street one day going to cause enough disruption that your city is going to be like, oh shit, they ruined the day. We need to
change things at the top, yeah.
Then it's like, oh cool, they're going to walk today. We know they're going to walk today. They planned it. We know ahead. Like, you need to scare people, basically. You kind of need to scare people. And I know people say, oh, but I don't care. You need to scare people. You need to make them fear that something is going to be taken away from them, whether it's their life or their livelihood, but you need to scare them.
And that's kind of like that's one of the... A lot of people like to quote Martin Luther King about, you know, he did it peacefully, he had it this way, but people seem to forget that he said, we're going to do this peacefully until peaceful doesn't work anymore. He said, a riot is the language of the unheard. And that's the quote people seem to forget, is that if people are doing things that you find disagreeable, then there is obviously some discrepancy in society that needs changing, because otherwise these things wouldn't happen in the first place.
Yeah. Going back to your question, you said or whoever's question it was, they said, what do we need to do to improve race relations or whatever? One thing actually that came to my head, I think everyone needs to question themselves more. And I say this because I come from a place where even in my family, even in comparison to people darker skinned than me, I have been one of the more switched on critical thinkers in my circles, you know? And one of the reasons I think is because I've always questioned things, and I've especially questioned myself, not in a sense of I don't trust myself, but question, why did I think that? You know, my uncle used to say the simplest thing: watch a group of white boys walk into a room, look at everyone's reaction. Watch a group of black boys walk into a room, watch everyone's reaction. You know, and from that, I always used to think, yeah, I do the same thing in my head. I go, okay, this just happened. This is how it makes me feel. Why does it make me feel that way? Because the amount of people who are so quick to say, but I'm not racist. Yes. I don't know why we even still use that word in such a basic sense, because it doesn't actually help. Like, it's not about that. It's about understanding why your thinking patterns are the way they are. Like, okay, I just saw a confrontation between two people. Why do I assume that this person has done this? Why am I automatically feeling to side with this person? Why am I looking at the situation and thinking, oh, it looks like every situation that happens, if people question themselves more, you know, go, okay, why am I feeling nervous in this situation? Is it because this person actually makes me feel nervous, or is it just because there's a preconceived idea about the way they look, you know? And not enough people question they're so quick to say, even in relationships, oh, it's just a preference. Question your preferences. Why do you constantly say, you know, I just don't date black women, or I don't date black men, you know? And even for a lot of black people, I question all like, but why? Well, it's just my preference. Well, then you need to question your preferences. Why do they exist? Nothing is for no reason, you know? And a great example of this, I don't even remember how I know this woman. She's a slightly older white woman. She got beat up bad by, I think, 3 black boys. And she posted a status about this in this period of time. And it was one of the best things I read. And she explained what had happened, explained the situation, and then she goes, and these boys were black. And then she goes on to explain, anyone who asked me what happened, I did not tell them they were black. Even people were asking, saying, what did they look like? Were they white? Were they black? Were they black? Like, people would ask. And she refused to tell people. And she said, the color they are is not important. And not enough people will look at a situation without comparing. And obviously there is times when it is relevant, but for the most part, people are looking at things and they're not addressing why they are thinking things a certain way.
That's a very
and I've even called friends out on it. The amount of times, the most basic one, oh yeah, it was a big black guy. Okay, but why does that matter? Oh yeah, big black guy walked into me. But you wouldn't have said if it was a big white guy that walked into you. You wouldn't say, oh, that big white guy walked into me. It was just that big guy. Yeah, but he was black. I'm just saying he was black. But why? Why do you need to say? Why do you notice? Why does that become a part of it so quickly? Oh, it's just the way he looks. No. Question that. Because so many people, all of us, it's even, like I said, I've questioned myself so much. Even that when I feel something and I'm like, I know what I'm looking at, but yet it still makes me feel that. And it makes me feel that because of what I've been conditioned to think.
Yeah.
Even though I know better, it still affects me, let alone somebody who doesn't think and question it, you know?
I think that's a really important thing to note, because when you're talking about preconceived ideas and notions and questioning yourself, it then brings me on to the thing that I think that is the only thing that has ever made any real change in history, almost ever, is people at the top need to make decisions that then filter down. Because if we have preconceived ideas and notions, it's because of the way that the media are allowed and permitted to represent people in their stories. It's because there are things in place that disadvantage people who come to this country, being told that. So let's talk about the Windrush scandal, okay? In the 19. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, like, with the Windrush scandal, I had a conversation with some friends when the terrorist girl, I can't remember her name, with the baby.
Yes, Malala?
Entry.
No.
I don't remember her name.
I don't remember.
But when that happened, I said, watch, they're going to do the same thing to our families. They're going to do the same thing. And they're like, no, but they've been here for years. It's not going to matter. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to find a reason to say, actually, you're not citizens of here, or you did something all those years ago, or actually, you're not a resident, so you need to go back. And then they did it. I was like,
so
I knew they would do that.
For people who don't know about the Windrush scandal, the Windrush was the name of the ship that brought the first group of people from the Caribbean over to the UK at promise of work. So they were working in post World War II environment to try and rebuild society. These people went on to be labourers, tradesmen, NHS workers, whatever. They stayed in the country. They worked, and they were told they were welcome. And whilst they may not have been welcome while they were there, but let's not talk about that.
More than that, they were told, like my grandparents came, that's when my grandparents came, they told them that the UK, Great Britain was the best place. They were like, you're British. They had parades and parties, and they celebrated the Queen in Jamaica because of this shit. They had parades and shit, and they were like, yes, we're going to Great Britain. Like, they made them think that this was going to be the best thing. Like, they were so proud to be British before they even came here.
And let's not forget that Britain has done this to pretty much every ethnic group that you see in this country. My grandparents, exactly the same story. They were out in Sri Lanka, and they were told, look at how much money you'd earn per hour compared to back home. And my grandparents, as far as the story that I've been told, had land. They had estates. They had staff. Like they were in the context of their own home, very wealthy. And then they were brought over to the UK, promised the world, and then put into very poor housing, which is why we see them clumped together so much today. Anyway, so this has happened to this movement, the Windrush movement, and then after however many years, 70 odd years, and we're talking about this happened 2017, 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
They nullified their passports, so the government said your passports don't count anymore. Then they started to detain people based on very, very flimsy charges, usually being the nullified passports, and then started to deport people by the
or time served, like, oh, you did 2 years in prison 10 years ago.
Yeah, and then now you have to leave.
And the other thing of, those who had been granted or had indefinite leave of stay because they came with their parents when they were kids, who then who'd never thought they needed some sort of citizenship, and we're like, oh, actually, you're not citizens of here. You need to apply, but for now you can't be here, so you're getting sent back, even though you have no family there.
Yeah,
and then you got to go back and apply to live here to come back. Like,
so interesting statement, which I'm not sure which way this is going to swing. Should we now destroy Liverpool, as this was built on the backbone of the slave trade in the 1700s, and there's still so many statues of men who built Liverpool from slave trade? Now, I'm actually, if it's okay with you, I'm actually going to field this one. When
is Liverpool like the city?
Yeah, I think he's kind of, by hyperbole, saying that if we're taking down one statue, should we take down everything else? One thing we have to remember about what's happening is that the movement is doing one of two things. It's inciting a reaction, so it's doing things that are getting talked about, and making a statement. When you put a statue up, a lot of people say it erases your history. Your history means nothing now. That's not true. We teach history in classrooms through books, through materials. Statues are there to celebrate the people who were parts of history, and at the time, the people who are celebrated, it makes sense for the culture of the people who were around. It would be a mistake to then think that because we've taken down one set of statues, by association, we should be taking down everything else. That's not the point we're trying to make here. The point is we're trying to get fair representation of what has happened in the past. I hope that.
And it doesn't have to be, no disrespect to whoever it was who said that, but I feel like it's a very, I don't want to say, I feel like people use that, I'm not saying this person did, but people use that argument as quite a spiteful tactic to dismiss addressing it. Oh, if we address it, that means we have to go all this way and do all of this. So why are we going to do that so we don't do anything about it? No, it's not even one or the other. It's not black or white. There is a spectrum of things that can happen. Maybe one gets taken down, maybe one doesn't. So what? Like,
yeah. The point is,
one is taken down, and mother might not be, and that's fine.
It's about making a statement and sending a message. I think we've been going for about an hour now. I think that's more than enough. I don't want to. I feel like sometimes with these things, people talk for so long that nobody ends up listening. So Is there any kind of closing statements or anything you want to leave on before we end the call?
Now, what we said like about questioning ourselves, I think that's really important. Like, I said it to someone the other day. I was like, if you really want to learn, the first thing you need to do is not be defensive. Do not go, oh, I'm not racist. Forget that. Just forget that. Forget everything you think about yourself. Forget everything you think you know. Does not matter. It literally is irrelevant now. Oh, you're not racist? Great. Now let's learn. Like, doesn't matter, you know? Forget everything and just question. Just be open, you know? I'm constantly, like, situations with women or those who are, you know, non-cis, non-hetero, whatever, you know, who are not me. I'm constantly questioning why I feel or do certain things. Is it because it's just the way it is? Or is it because of some preconceived way, because of something I've been conditioned to think of? Constantly, like, question, you know, obviously don't live your life on eggshells, but constantly question. And the more people start questioning, the more they will probably start to realize that things don't add up and they've actually been taught to think and do certain things. And then they start to understand what we're talking about. And they go, oh, I get it, actually. Yeah, I get it, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool. Dude,
question and listen.
Say again. So, yeah, that and
Question
listen.
And listen.
Question and listen. Dude, thank you so much for taking the time out your evening to chat to me. I really appreciate having a different perspective. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out, man.
Cool, thank you. Nice to talk, man.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. All right, I'll catch you on the flip, my friend. Take it easy.
In a bit, man. Bye.
Bye. Wow, we got through a lot there, and again, just to kind of maintain the last point, I don't want to talk for too long, which I feel like maybe we already crossed the threshold, or maybe we already did. A couple of comments saying things change when minds change. That's a very good point. Good chat, guys. Had a million times I wanted to type, but couldn't type quick enough. I wonder if there's a system where we can get kind of an allotted question time. I feel like discussions like that are important, and you know, it's good for people to kind of weigh in. And thank you guys for committing your time and for being so kind as to watch it and to pay attention. I think to end, I'm going to summarize the points that we talked about. So with Ellis, we talked about how numbers are kind of very, very flexible. One thing I didn't mention with this talk that I promised myself that I would mention is that or maybe I didn't, I forgot, is that the stats that are released by the government don't take into account, I did already say this, the stats released by the government don't take into account people who haven't been tested, so it's very possible that the numbers are much worse. And so his point on the back of that was, you know, numbers are great. Numbers are a great starting point to your research. And this is how I learned a lot about what are the things that are happening at a government level in the US, for example. When people say 46% of the crime is committed by 6% of the population, your job then is not to hear that and absorb it as fact. Your job is to hear that and then go and find out why those numbers occurred, who found those numbers, what's the story behind it. Linda says, that was really good. Thank you, Linda, for joining. It really means a lot. Tom says, we need to invest time for conversations like these. And Ali, you had some amazingly positive comments that we said earlier. And Ryan, you had some very kind of anarchistic comments, which are definitely worth noting. He mentioned that also MLK did it peacefully and they still assassinated him. That's a very good point. Ali says education and hope with the younger generations. I think that's something that I take from science, is that when people teach, they're never trying to hit their own generation or above. It's the ideas and concepts that we teach at a young age that are important. Things change when minds change. Right, I am going to stop milking this now. I'm going to thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful evening. Keep learning, keep listening, and try and be as patient as you can, because some people are losing patience, and that's where we're losing people. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. I'm wishing everyone all the best, and have a great evening.